The letter was never supposed to reach her. It was being hidden for 10 years inside an old wooden bookcase in a quiet community library in Nadira, an African town surrounded by red earth roads, palm trees, and small businesses. The envelope was faded, the ink had almost disappeared, and in front were two words: for Sela. The librarian found it while moving old books. She almost threw it away, but something made her stop. There was no stamp, no address, only a name: Sela. The librarian searched the town records, and 3 days later, the letter was delivered. Sela was 40 years old when she received it. She stood in her doorway holding the envelope. She recognized the handwriting immediately. Her hands began to tremble. She had not seen that handwriting in 10 years. It belonged to the only man she had ever loved, Noah. She stared at the envelope. Then she whispered, "Why now?" She opened it, and the first sentence made her sit down. "Sela, if you're reading this, then you finally know why I disappeared." Sela and Noah had once been inseparable. They weren't rich, they weren't important. They were simply two young people who believed they could build a beautiful life together. Sela worked at a small textile shop. Noah repaired electrical equipment and dreamt of opening his own workshop. They spent evenings walking through Nadira's quiet streets, talking about the future. Their dream was simple: a small house, a workshop for Noah, a sewing room for Sela, and enough space to grow old together. Then Noah proposed. Sela said yes. Their wedding was planned for the following year, but 1 week before the engagement ceremony, Noah disappeared. No explanation, no goodbye, nothing. Sela waited. 1 day became 1 week. 1 week became 1 month. Then months became years. Eventually, she stopped waiting, but she never stopped wondering. The truth had begun with a photograph of Noah and another woman. Sela had received it anonymously. The photograph showed Noah standing outside a large building with a woman named Tara. Behind them was a sign for a business. Beneath the photograph was a short message: "He's leaving Nadira with her. Don't wait for him." Sela refused to believe it. She confronted Noah. He became strangely quiet. She asked him what the photograph meant. He wouldn't explain. Instead, he said something that broke her heart. "We can't continue." Sela stared at him. "Why?" Noah looked away. "I have changed my mind." That was all he said. He walked away, and Sela never saw him again. Sela had built a successful tailoring business. She designed beautiful African clothing and had become known throughout Nadira for her work. She was independent, strong, successful. But there was one thing she never talked about: Noah. She never married. Whenever someone asked why, she simply smiled. "I am busy." She had convinced herself that she had moved on until the letter arrived. Now, let's go back to the letter. Sela continued reading. "I know you hate me." She stopped, her eyes filled with tears. The next line was worse. "But I never left because I stopped loving you." Sela's heart began beating faster. She read on. Noah explained that 10 years earlier, his younger brother had secretly borrowed money from a dangerous business partner to save the family workshop. When the debts couldn't be repaid, the man threatened to take everything. Noah had tried to solve the problem himself. Then he discovered that the debt was connected to a much bigger scheme involving several businesses in Nadira. He needed money quickly. Tara, the woman in the photograph, was the daughter of a businessman who offered Noah a job in another city. It was the only opportunity he had to earn enough money to save his family workshop. But there was more. Noah had planned to return. He had even bought Sela a ring. Then something happened. He received a message from Sela, or so he thought. The message said, "I don't want you anymore. Don't come back." Noah believed her. He left. But Sela had never sent that message. Wow. Sela reread the letter. Her mind raced. If Noah never received her real message, who had sent it? She searched through her old phone records. The phone was long gone. But she still had an old notebook where she had written down important numbers. One name caught her attention: Mira. Mira had been Sela's closest friend 10 years earlier. She had been the person Sela trusted most, and Mira had been the person who knew everything about Sela and Noah. Sela immediately went looking for her. Sela found Mira working at a small restaurant on the other side of the town. When Mira saw her, she froze. Sela placed the letter on the table. Mira looked at it. Her face changed. "You found it." Sela stared at her. "You knew." Mira sat down slowly. "I knew there was a letter." "Why didn't you give it to me?" Mira's eyes filled with tears. "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" Mira finally told her the truth. 10 years ago, Noah had written the letter and given it to Mira. He asked her to deliver it to Sela if he didn't return within 3 months. But before Mira could give it to Sela, something terrible happened. Sela's father discovered that Noah's family was deeply in debt. He believed Noah would eventually bring financial problems to Sela's life, so he offered Mira money to keep the letter hidden. Mira accepted, not because she wanted to destroy Sela's happiness, but because she was struggling financially and desperately needed the money to pay for her mother's medical treatment. She thought Noah would eventually come back, but he didn't, and the longer she kept the secret, the harder it became to tell the truth. Sela felt betrayed. "You let 10 years pass, Mira." Mira lowered her head. "I know." Sela returned home. There was one final page. She hadn't noticed it because it had been folded inside the envelope. She opened it. "Sela, if this letter reaches you, I don't know where life has taken you. Maybe you have married. Maybe you've forgotten me. Maybe you're happy." Sela stopped reading. Then came the sentence that broke her heart. "But if some small part of you still remembers the man I was, I am coming back to Nadira tomorrow." Sela looked at the date. The letter had been written 10 years earlier. He had planned to return the following day, but he never came. Why? Sela spent the night searching for answers. The following morning, she visited the old workshop. It had been abandoned for years. She found an old metal sign hanging above the entrance. "Noah's Repair Works." Her heart stopped. He had actually built the workshop. She entered. Dust covered everything, but on the wall was something she recognized. A photograph. The photograph of the two of them from 10 years earlier. Beside it was a small wooden box. Inside was the engagement ring Noah had bought for her, and underneath it was another note. "I came back." Sela's hand shook. Then she found the date. He had returned 3 months after writing the letter, but the workshop had already been closed. Someone had told him Sela had moved away, that she had started a new life, that she didn't want to see him. Another lie. Someone had kept them apart from both directions. That evening, Sela stood outside her tailoring shop. A familiar voice came from behind her. "Sela." She froze. She didn't turn immediately. She already knew. After 10 years, she knew that voice. She turned. Noah stood across the street. He looked older. There were faint lines around his eyes. His hair was slightly gray, but his eyes were the same eyes she remembered from long walks through Nadira. Neither of them spoke. For several seconds, they simply looked at each other. Then Sela asked, "Why didn't you come back?" Noah smiled sadly. "I never really left." Sela frowned. "What does that mean?" He explained that after returning 10 years earlier and discovering that she had supposedly moved away, he had stayed in another town nearby. He rebuilt his life. He opened a successful electrical business, but he never married. He had always believed Sela had chosen another life. Until a few weeks earlier, he received a message from the old library asking whether he knew a woman named Sela. He immediately knew something was wrong. He came back and discovered that she had never left. Sela looked at him. "You should have come looking for me." Noah nodded. "I should have. You believed one message and disappeared." "I was young. So was I." He looked down. "I was afraid." Sela's voice softened. "Of what?" "Of discovering that you really didn't want me." Sela looked away. For 10 years, she had believed Noah had abandoned her. For 10 years, Noah had believed Sela had rejected him. Both had built their lives around a lie, and neither had known. Noah didn't ask her to forget the past. He didn't ask her to remarry him immediately. Instead, he said, "I am not here to take 10 years from you." Sela looked at him. "I am here because I finally have the courage to tell you the truth." She didn't answer. She walked inside her shop. Noah turned to leave, but Sela called his name. He stopped. She came back outside. "I don't know if we can become what we were." Noah nodded. "I don't know either." She smiled faintly. "But maybe we don't have to." He looked at her. We could become something new. For the first time that evening, they both smiled. 1 year later, the old repair workshop had changed. Half of it belonged to Noah, then half of it belonged to Sela. He repaired electrical equipment, she designed clothing. Then they had turned the building into a shared creative space where young people could learn sewing, repairs, and practical skills. On the wall hung an old photograph, 2 young people before the separation. Beside it was another photograph, 2 older people after the reunion. Underneath both pictures was a simple sentence: some hearts don't need a new beginning, they need the truth. Mira eventually visited them. She apologized. Sela forgave her, not because what she had done was small, but because Sela had finally understood that carrying 10 years of anger would only make the past steal even more of her future. One evening, Sela sat outside the workshop watching the sunset. Noah brought her a cup of tea. She smiled. You know something? What? If that letter had arrived 10 years ago, everything would be different. Noah sat beside her. Maybe. She looked at him, but it had arrived when we were finally ready to understand it. The sun disappeared behind the tree. The town became quiet, and the 2 people who had once lost 10 years sat together without needing to explain anything. Because sometimes love doesn't disappear. Sometimes life simply puts it somewhere you cannot reach it until the right moment comes. And sometimes all it takes is one letter to remind 2 hearts that they never truly stopped waiting for each other.